have to fear is
In war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
You find your way to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. Thank you for joining us today. You can visit online at wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton, and we are taking a look at the election results this week. Obviously, the entire House up on the ballot this year, and then about a third of the Senate, and a lot of governor's races, and then, of course, a ton of legislative races and all our local races. So, David, just trying to comb through all the results and kind of get an understanding of what's happened here. Republicans have had a pretty good week. They swept in a lot of areas, and looks like now have both the House and Senate. But what do you think just overall, before we jump into some of the races? Because I remember you telling me last week on the air that it wasn't just that Republicans looked like they were going to win, that there were actually some really good candidates on the ballot. I mean, good pro-life men and women, folks that you've worked with over the years, Family Policy Council guys like Gary Palmer and others. I mean, a lot of good people ran this year.
Yeah, the quality of candidates this year is as good as I've seen in a while. I was telling someone else that this is some of the best quality candidates that we've had since back in 1994 with the Republican Revolution, when you had folks like Steve Largent and J.C. Watts and Helen Chenoweth and so many other guys that were just rock-solid rock stars, so much more committed to principles than they were to being Republican or any party at all. So this class has much of that same caliber, that same feel. And, you know, now that we're a couple days down the road and a lot of the races have kind of settled out, I mean, clearly the Republicans have taken the Senate with a nice operating majority. You have Republicans who gained a number of seats in the House, which was not expected. Democrats actually believed that they were going to be able to take back some seats in the House. They did think they would hold the Senate. That was nowhere close. So there's a lot of switch. There were several governor's races that went Republican in interesting states that you would not expect. The fact that you have both Illinois and Maryland going for Republican governors, the fact that you have a Republican legislative chamber in Massachusetts. I mean, there's just some pretty striking changes that happened this time that really no one saw coming.
Yeah, this was definitely a big change election. But I want to come back to something you just said, because a lot of times people get cynical and say, well, it doesn't matter if it's Republican, Democrat, or whatever. They're all the same, blah, blah, blah. We hear that all the time. We know there's a difference. You get a difference in legislation, a difference in what happens in the culture. But those specific people that you were talking about, I think that's what gives me hope more than anything. Even though you're not going to have, people shouldn't expect everything to change overnight in terms of we've saved the Constitution, we don't have to worry about it, go home, forget it. Don't dare take that attitude. This is a generational fight. But there are some real warriors out there that won this time, and a handful like that in the House and the Senate can push this whole thing in the right direction and drive that agenda. It
can. And let me jump on something else you just said. I mean, we can't look at what happened on Tuesday night and say the election's over. No. Got news for you. On Wednesday, the next election started.
That's right.
And on Wednesday, we start saying, if we want to have good results, we've got to start right now recruiting the right kind of people and getting them to run.
Oh, but come on, David. We just worked so hard for all year. Can I quit now? I mean, can I take a break? Why do I have to? It's price of freedom's eternal vigilance, right?
Well, let me go to North Carolina as an example, because North Carolina was one that the Republican Tillis pulled out at the very end. It was a race that was really heavily contested. The incumbent Hagan, they thought that she might be able to hold on to that, and she certainly was leading in the polls throughout the time. And so as you look at that particular race, it was thought that she was going to win, and that's what the polling showed. But Tillis did pull it out. But what's striking is when you look across the East Coast results, and that was the first time zone to come in, and I was on Tuesday night, I was doing national TV coverage covering the election results. As you watched it come in, it was very striking to see that in many, many, many areas, the polls were just flat wrong. I mean, you look at that neck-and-neck race for Virginia Senate with Gillespie and Warner. The polls consistently had, in the weeks leading up to the election, they had Gillespie down 9.7 points on average. Well, how did he turn neck and neck? The polls missed it by 10 points.
Yeah, it comes down to just a few thousand votes when they were saying it was going to be a landslide.
A landslide, a 10-point landslide. And then you go down to Georgia, and you look at what happened in Georgia, because that Senate race down there between Perdue and Nunn, there was a third guy in it, and they said, well, that's going to go to runoff. Neither one's going to crack the 50%. No, didn't crack the 50%, cracked the 60%. I mean, it was a slam dunk on Perdue on that. And we watched that as the races came rolling in across the East Coast time zone, and what were supposed to be very tight races, they were not tight. Now, what's striking is anywhere that it was perceived that you had a genuine conservative, those blew out the polls by 10 points. But where you had a moderate or a squishy person like Tillis, it was a very tight race. And so what struck me was, the polls were right where you had squishy and not very conservative folks. The polls were dead wrong by double digits in the number of cases where that there was actually a genuine conservative candidate against the liberal that was there. I mean, as you go to Arkansas, the Senate race in Arkansas, Tom Cotton, they closed the polls in Arkansas at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. 3 minutes later, they'd already called Tom Cotton winning the Senate race. Now, that was a race that was within 2 points. It was considered a toss-up race when the night began. And 3 minutes after the polls closed, they've already announced the winner? My gosh, that wasn't...
And he ends up winning by almost 20 points. I mean, like 17, 18 points. I mean, he just crushed him.
Yeah, and that's against a popular incumbent. A very well-liked, nice guy incumbent.
Well, and a name that had been, Arkansas politics for
forever.
Decades and decades and decades.
And then you also had Asa Hutchinson pick up and so now Arkansas, I think this is the first time in their history that every congressman, every U.S. senator, and the governor are all Republican. And by the way, they're not just Republican, they're conservative Republican. John Bozeman, the other senator now with Cotton, you've got a very conservative delegation there. And so wherever you had genuine conservatives, they did very, very well. Scott Walker in Wisconsin was expected to be a neck-and-neck race, and people were really watching because they believed it would blow up his presidential hopes because it was going to be too tight. Blowout, not even close. As you look down at Florida, I mean, you had this race between Rick Scott and Charlie Crist, and Crist is consistently up in the polls, and yet Rick Scott wins. So,
and I hope Charlie Crist goes away. Please tell me he's finally going to go. I'm sorry.
Well, we were predicting that it's time for him to become an independent now.
Yeah, I guess so. He's tried Republican, tried Democrat, time to go independent.
Been rejected on both of those, so it's time to be, do the Bob Barr thing, become an independent, I guess. That's what they were predicting on TV.
No doubt. Hey, got to take a quick break, Dave. We'll come back, get some more results. Folks, there's so much to go through here. We're going to get to as much of it as we can. Quick break. We'll be right back on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Federal courts have made several amazing rulings recently, ordering the removal of a cross from a cemetery, banning religious holiday displays, removing the Ten Commandments from public view, prohibiting student prayers whether verbal or silent, and numerous other similar restrictive rulings. As one current justice has noted, the Supreme Court has now become, quote, a national board of theology. Our founding fathers would be astounded. They designed the First Amendment to keep the federal courts completely out of this issue. As Thomas Jefferson forcefully declared, I consider the federal government as prohibited by the Constitution from meddling with religious exercises. The First Amendment was designed to keep decisions on religious expression out of the federal courts and in the hands of the local communities.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. We are talking about the election results this week and what's going to happen with that. And one of the things that's going to drive what happens next is the caliber of folks that got elected. It's not just a bunch of politicians that just want to go hang out in Washington, D.C. There are some real activists here. And David, some of these folks, I mean, we've worked with for years, and now, man, they're headed to Congress with they've got convictions. They really believe what they're going there for. And this is why we do what we do.
It is. And one of the things we're seeing is, as I was pointing out with polling, Republicans didn't necessarily win on election night. Conservatives won on election night. And where you had Republicans and not conservatives, there was a very, 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 very tight race. Where you had conservatives, it was not a tight race. And that says something across the nation. Yeah, there's some conservatives that lost places here and there. But
there were a few that were tight because the left came after them with both barrels blazing. I mean, we had some of our good guys that were really in the crosshairs. They targeted big time, and they still won. I mean, at state level, you had guys like Brownback in Kansas,
Paul
got reelected
LePage
as
up
governor.
in Maine. I mean, you had squeaker elections where. And by the way, here's what's interesting. A week and a half ago, Paul LePage in Maine was down by 12 points. He wins the election. A month ago, Sam Brownback was down by 12 points in Kansas. He wins the election.
Our friend Pat Colbeck, state senator in Michigan, was down or tight, ends up winning by several points.
Yeah, and same across so many other places as well. So we did very good for conservative guys. Now, here's what happens. Here's what everybody's asking. All right, Republicans have it. So what difference will that make?
Yeah, what next?
What next? Well, there's a couple of things that will make a difference. And one of them is based on what you were talking about, that the caliber of people we just got elected. And I know a whole bunch of these freshmen. I've been talking to them even in the last couple of days, been talking to members of Congress just all over on lots of stuff going on. And so as you look at this new class coming up, interestingly, Ken Buck, a freshman out of Colorado, and Ken Buck is a rock-solid believer, a rock-solid conservative, constitutional conservative, great guy. He started looking at what leadership has been doing, Boehner and others have been doing, and he said, that's not what the American people want, and that's not what a whole lot of the congressmen want. And sure enough, as soon as we get there, they're going to try to push us freshmen into that mold, in that Boehner mold, and that's not what we were elected for. And so what happened is Ken Buck started contacting the other likely freshmen, those that looked like they would win or have won. A lot of them already have one. We talked before about Gary Palmer and Jody Dice and Barry Loudermilk and guys like that. And so as you look at them, Ken started communicating with them, saying, all right, guys, here's what's going to happen. When we get there, they're going to push us to vote for who leadership wants. Leadership has already decided who needs to be the freshman representative. We're supposed to decide our freshman representative, not leadership. Leadership's already deciding who's supposed to be the liaison, the freshman liaison to the conference committee, which is where they make policy. We should be doing that. And so he's got these guys all primed not to get pushed around by leadership. And that's interesting. Gary Palmer, I mean, he made news, the newly elected guy out of Alabama. He went up there and told Boehner, I'm not voting for you. I'm not supporting your agenda, and I'm not voting for you for leader. Clint Didier out in Washington, Washington Redskin, good guy. I love him. He's just a fun guy to be with. But Clint has run and campaigned on the fact that I go to Washington, I'm not voting for Boehner. And so you have these freshmen who are coming in willing to take on leadership from the very beginning. Now, that's good, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a change. But by the way, if people don't know, on the 11th, 12th, and 13th of November, I mean, just a matter of a few days from now, they will be voting on all the leadership elections. And so before the freshmen have a chance to even figure out what's happened, I mean, it's just a few days after election. They're trying to get their office in order after having been out campaigning for months. Now they've got to choose all these leadership positions, and most of them haven't even met each other yet. So they're going to get to D.C., and most of them don't know the others. And I don't know if I want Gary Palmer to be the liaison to the leadership. I haven't met Gary before. And so that's what they're going through. And that's why Ken has stepped out and said, all right, let's meet each other. Let's get comfortable with each other. Let's get organized. Let's not go in and let them lead us around and separate and divide us. And that by itself is really, really good. Now, after the break, we'll talk about what difference that makes.
Yeah, so that's good. Not only good guys and gals getting elected, but they're being strategic as well. They're planning already and looking for ways to influence this thing in the right direction. Stay with us, folks. More when we return right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Crime is one of America's most serious problems today. Its effects reach not only the direct victims of its violence, but even those who have not been attacked. The concern for crime has not been limited to this century, however. Our founding fathers were also concerned about it. Yet the effects of crime unquestionably were much less in their generation. So what was their deterrent to crime? Signer of the Constitution, James McHenry, answered that question. He explained, "The Holy Scriptures can alone secure to society order and peace. In vain, without the Bible, we increase penal laws and draw protections around our institutions. Bibles are strong defenses. Where they abound, men cannot pursue wicked courses." Founding Father James McHenry believed that widely teaching the Bible was the best means to deter crime.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Hey, this is Tim Barton with WallBuilders. And as you've had the opportunity to listen to WallBuilders Live, you've probably heard the wealth of information about our nation, about our spiritual heritage, about the religious liberties, about all the things that makes America exceptional. And you might be thinking, as incredible as this information is, I wish there was a way that I could get one of the WallBuilders guys to come to my area and share with my group, whether it be a church, whether it be a Christian school or public school or some political event or activity. If you're interested in having a WallBuilder speaker come to your area, you can get on our website at www.wallbuilders.com, and there's a tab for scheduling. And if you'll click on that tab, you'll notice there's a list of information from speakers' bios to events that are already going on, and there's a section where you can request an event to bring this information about who we are, where we came from, our religious liberties and freedoms. Go to the WallBuilders website and bring a speaker to your area.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton. We're talking about the election results this week, and some of the very positive things are that we had some really good men and women get elected that are solid constitutional conservatives going in there with not just the right ideas, but the right strategies on how to do this thing right and how to move the agenda in the right direction. So, David, you said there are, even the freshmen that are going in that typically, takes a while to figure your way around. They're already planning. They're already working together.
They are already working together and ready to go in and make a difference. And here's one of the ways that'll happen. This is one of the votes that happens on the 13th of this month. And you and I, Rick, we often talk on the program about how important process is. That if you don't understand process, you really can't be effective. And even back in the book of Timothy in the Bible, it talks about he that runs in a race has to run according to the rules. And that's process. You have to know what the rules are and how to play within the rules and how to use the rules. And if you're in professional sports, you got to know what the rules are. Otherwise, you can't be effective. And that's the same with us. To be effective citizens, we have to understand process. Well, one of the processes is that within the Congress, both the Democrats and the Republicans have committees to help elect congressmen to Congress. So the Democrats will have the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee, and the Republicans have the Republican National Congressional Committee, and the Republican Committee works to elect Republicans to Congress, Democrats to Congress. Well, members of each party raise big-time money for that committee. So if you're an incumbent in Congress, you'll raise $100,000 to $400,000 for that committee. And then that committee will take and spend that money to help elect more Republicans or more Democrats. Well, you have a real advantage if you have money coming into you as opposed to a candidate who doesn't. So if you and I are in a race and we look up and I've just been given $1 million gift from other Republicans, congressmen, and you in your bank account show to have $53 in your campaign account, I now have a massive advantage over you because of the money that's come in. So what has happened in the last couple of sessions, particularly as the National Congressional Committee on the Republican side has been headed by Republicans like Pete Sessions and Greg Walden, they have taken a hard left turn. They went into, for example, that they no longer allow the primary voters to choose the people they want to represent them. These guys are going in and choosing primary awareness ahead of time and giving them money. And what they did is they went into Southern California, conservative part, and they found an open homosexual, practicing homosexual, and said, he's the guy we want to be a Republican. That'll show how tolerant, how great we are. And so against a conservative, they poured the money into this guy. He narrowly won the primary with all the help. Well, these guys that are coming in, that's not what they want the Republicans to be doing. They're going there for principle. Republicans had a platform, but these guys like Walden and Sessions apparently don't care what it is. Now the freshmen go in saying, hey, we got a chance to make a difference in leadership because this affects the caliber of candidate that we recruit and fund for the next 2 years, which would significantly improve the chances of getting more conservative stuff through Congress to have the right kind of congressman in. And so the freshmen are going in now, and there are a number of congressmen. Last year when Walden and Sessions went out and recruited these guys to run, these guys that reflect nothing that conservatives believe, you had a number of the senior members of Congress who just left the congressional committee. They won't even raise money for it anymore because that's not the guys they got elected to help. That's not the agenda they want to move forward. They want to move forward a pro-family agenda. And so you now have a great coalition of both senior guys and freshman guys ready to challenge leadership. And the guys that we just elected on Tuesday night are going in to make a difference. And that has lasting consequences for up to 15 years from now because of the guys we may elect in the next cycle.
Well, that's a great action item for folks at home this next week and through that day to be praying for good results there, that good people will get in there, that some of these freshmen and newer members will be able to get into some of these positions of leadership. Got to take a quick break. We'll come back. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Today, we heard that our founding fathers were largely atheists, agnostics, or deists. The writings of founding father Richard Henry Lee strongly refute that assertion. Richard Henry Lee was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and he is specifically the man who made the motion in Congress that America separate from Great Britain. Following his death, his papers and correspondence, including numerous original handwritten letters from other prominent founding fathers, were passed on to his grandson. After having studied those letters, this was how the grandson described our founding fathers. He declared, "The wise and great men of those days were not ashamed publicly to confess the name of our blessed Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. In behalf of the people, as their representatives and rulers, they acknowledged the sublime doctrine of His mediation."
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
We're back on WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. We're talking about the election results this week. So, David, only a few minutes left today. Just kind of sum up for us how do you feel about the results? What do you think happens next? This doesn't end on Tuesday night. Not only does the next campaign start on the very next day, but even right now during this process or next spring when legislation is being, pushed through, making those calls. Right now they can make a call that helps go even further and do even better than what we did on Tuesday night.
That's right. And this is part of continuing that process. And by the way, there is a real opportunity for change with these new guys coming in. If folks don't know, there were 365 bills that made it through the House that were not taken up in the Senate. And it was not that Republicans were trying to embarrass the president, which they may have been, but what's significant is 200 of those 365 measures passed unanimously, and 100 of them passed, 100 more passed with 75% Democrat support. So you had Democrats and Republicans trying to push the Senate to do some things that the Senate refused to do, and both Harry Reid and Barack Obama keep talking about the obstructionist Republicans. No, I don't think so. Democrats and Republicans both voted those bills out. So with the right kind of leadership, and now with the change in the Senate, you're going to see a lot of those come through. Now, does that mean the president will sign them? No. But he may get embarrassed about having to veto 300 bills if we get them through both bodies. And so that's another thing. It may not significantly change the quality of the nation in the next 2 years, but it will significantly change the tone of the debate. It will significantly say what's important to Americans, and it will set the tone for the 2016 elections, and that starts this week with what starts happening right now.
It does, absolutely. Our work continues. Our cause is just, and our work is not yet done. So stay involved out there, folks. Get on the websites today at wallbuilderslive.com and wallbuilders.com. Make those calls and start gathering more people around you. Let's take this good news and spread it, and then look for more ways to make a difference. Thanks for joining us today. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand under